Jeff just told us there are no easy fixes, but for a fan base that's used to such a level of winning, and when the team doesn't win, sometimes that doesn't work as an answer. What would you say to people that expect cups here and what's to come for this team?
Well, I think if you expect cups, you're in the wrong league. I think the salary cap in 2005 changed the game. There were some, when I looked 10 years ago, there were some dynasties. I thought Detroit had a dynasty, Dallas had a dynasty, New Jersey had a dynasty, Colorado had a dynasty. Those were the teams that competed for the cups. There's 30 teams competing for the cups for the Stanley Cup now. So the times have changed dramatically. We've made the playoffs 25 straight years in a row. With that comes drafting late. You need stars. You need stars. And I thought that if you look back over the last 20 years, when Steve, coming into the salary cap world in 2005-06, when Steve retired in 06, Shanahan left, I think, in 04, Fedorov left in 03 or 04. Nick Lidstrom defied Father Time and hung around for another decade, or 6 or 7 years, as one of the best defensemen in the world. I think he was 4th or 5th in voting for the Norrises last year when he retired. But Zetterberg and Datsuk showed up, and they carried the franchise for a decade. They were a 6th-round pick and a 7th-round pick, and they were stars, One's 37, one's 35. We're going to find out in the next month on Pav what his decision's going to be. Final decision, he's going to go play in the World Championships for Russia. When you pick late like we've picked, and on top of all that, I would say to you, we've traded picks. We traded a 2nd-round pick in 2008 for Brad Stewart. In the last couple of years, we traded 2nd-round picks. We've gone to the draft. Our scouts haven't had a lot of draft picks. You need stars. So we gotta, my feeling is, we've got some really good young players. Some are on the team here. Dylan Larkin, Peter Mrazek. Those two probably come to mind because they're 19 and 23 years of age. I don't know where they're going with their careers, but they're young players. They're important to this franchise. There's some other players. We got to draft. We got to develop. I'm not into a rebuild. As I look around the National Hockey League, there's teams last night playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs that hadn't won a playoff series in 20 and 23 years. It's a hard league, and picking high. So I was a part of this organization in 1985 when Jimmy D took over, and we had the first pick in the draft, Joe Murphy. And if we don't get Nick Lidstrom in the 3rd round and Sergei Fedorov in the 4th round, we might still be rebuilding. So rebuilds take 8 to 10 years. In my opinion, and that's if you want to tank it and you want to go through a massive rebuild. I don't think anybody wants to go through a massive rebuild. So I think that we've got to try to marginally get better, maybe change the look of our team a little bit, and we got to try to find a way to make the playoffs and give ourselves another opportunity. I don't know that there's any other way. When you look at these teams that you might think are the best teams in the National Hockey League. Some of these teams made the playoffs once in 10 years before they went into this run, or they missed the playoffs 5 straight years. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to start. We've got players in that locker room that are unrestricted free agents, or some are restricted free agents and are unrestricted free agents in a year. If I come in here and say we're going to go into a rebuild, who wants to sign up for a rebuild? Those players are going to go elsewhere. So we're going to try to win. We're going to try to make the team a little bit different. We're going to give some more responsibilities to some of our younger players. We're going to explore free agency like we've done. Now that's not the answer. I think we've seen free agency on July. Those players that are out there on July the 1st for the most part are support players. They're secondary players. They're not players that carry franchises around. If they are, for the most part, they are re-signed by their teams. I'm going to be more aggressive going to the draft this year and exploring trades. And I also would look at the history. A year ago today, when we had this year-end, we were coming off of 100 points. And 3/4 of the way through that season, we were competing for the President's Trophy. And then we traded for Cole. We traded for acquired Zidlicki. And the wheels came off a little. I think we played 8, 2, and 10 down the stretch. We kind of leaked oil down the stretch. We got into the playoffs. I thought we had a great 7-game series with Tampa. Couldn't get it done after being up 3-2. as we said in the off-season, we thought that, you know, we had a lot of young players that had made a step. Obviously, Mrazek was in goal. Glendenning had 11 or 12 goals. Tatar and Nyquist had 55 goals between them. Riley Sheehan had made a step. Zetterberg and Datsuk continued to buck Father Time. And we felt that we wanted to add to that team. And we added Mike Green. We added Brad Richards. We didn't know it at the time, but we also added Dylan Larkin as we went into training camp. Excuse me. And unfortunately, we didn't have a very good year. We had a disappointing year. We could never get any momentum going over the 82 games. And then we lost, obviously, in 5 games to Tampa Bay. So, you know, there are no quick fixes. There's nobody on the planet that's going to come in and start waving magic wands. You can look at other sports and other great franchises that are going through massive rebuilds. There are no quick fixes. There are no magic men that kind of come in, wave magic wands, and find superstars. It doesn't happen. And I'm going to go about, you know, I've been in pro sports since 1975 when I played 9 years of pro hockey. In 1985, Jim Devillano drafted me as a scout. I was in North Dakota on Saturday watching the under-18 tournament. We're looking at 18-year-old young men, and they need to be, Zetterberg and Datsuk, when they took this franchise over, they were 25 and 27. It was the work stoppage in 2005. Zetterberg went back and won the Swedish league in scoring. Datsuk went back and won the Russian league in scoring. And by the time they were 25 and 27, 26 and 28, they took the team over. Do we have any young players that can take the team over? I'm not sure. I don't want to sit here and say, oh, we're turning the team over to this young player or that young player. It's not fair to those players for me to sit here and put that kind of pressure on them that I don't know if they're ready to handle that. They got to grow into it. We got some good young players. Do we have stars? I don't know. I got to watch. We got to draft. We got to develop. We've got to explore free agency. We've got to change the mix a little bit. And we got to try again. We got to get in, and when we get in, we got to try to find a way to win a round and win 2 rounds. But I don't think that there's any quick fix for any franchise. When I look around I know I had a conversation here. Just go team by team in the National Hockey League and look where they are today and how they got there. And in most cases, probably all the cases, is they either had a lot of bad hockey for a long period of time, and there's teams in the league right now that are kind of going through that program. They're knocking it down, and they're trying to rebuild, and they're trying to build through the draft. I'm not going to do that. I still think that we are competitive. We want to make the playoffs 26 straight years in a row, but it's not about making the playoffs. It's about trying to go on a playoff run. But you can't go on a playoff run if you don't make the playoffs. And if I come in here and tell you, oh, our goal is to win the Stanley Cup next year, you guys are going to think I'm foolish because we've won 1 playoff round in 5 years. So I'm not going to come in here and tell you we're going to win the Stanley Cup. But that's the goal of all 30 teams in the National Hockey League. That's our goal as we head into the off season. That's the ultimate goal. But there's other goals along the way, things that need to happen for us to try to achieve being a Stanley Cup contender or a Stanley Cup playoff contending team. Does that answer your question?
I think I forgot the question I was going to ask you before. But two-part question here. Have you talked with ownership since you guys were eliminated, and do they still have confidence in the direction of this organization? And the second part, everyone agrees that it's hard to win a Stanley Cup. This town has come to expect greatness from this organization. Are you suggesting that fans need to start accepting a little bit less going forward?
I talked to Mrs. Illich on Sunday, and I talked briefly to Chris today. I am going to meet with them again in the next week. Well, Mr. and Mr. were together, and I talked with Mr. and I talked to just before the end on Game 4. I talked to both of them the day of Game 4. On Sunday, I talked to Mr. and Mrs. Mrs. was on the phone, Mr. was on the phone, and I talked to Chris a little bit today, and I told Chris that I'd like to set up a meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Illich and Chris sometime in the next week. So that's in the plans. What was part 2? The expectations of the fan base.
Are you saying that people need to start expecting
Yeah,
Team have deep runs. If you can't get the high draft picks to get the stars,
yeah.
are people going to have to start accepting less?
I think they're going to have to accept that the National Hockey League today is what I'm telling you. Like, other than 2 or 3 teams, you know, I congratulated Jimmy Neal yesterday on Dallas winning the playoff round. The last time Dallas won a playoff series was 2008. I mean, we just look around the league. You know, like, it's the league. Do we want to win a Stanley Cup? Yeah, absolutely. We want to Stanley. As we head into the off season, do I think that there's other teams that are, you know, on Vegas odds that they're better than we are? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean you can't make the playoffs. That doesn't mean you can't go on a playoff run. But you and I had a conversation the other day. We talked about a rebuild. You know, there's teams that have gone through that 10-year rebuild. They're out today like we're out. There are no guarantees. This is a salary cap world where nobody has any financial advantage. Maybe there's 3, 4, 5 teams that are near the floor, but for the most part, this is a level playing field. I've been fortunate to have been a part of, you know, we had 25 straight years in a row in the playoffs. I'm as proud of the fact that we're the only team in the league that's made the playoffs every year of the salary cap world. During that time, we set the all-time record for 100-point seasons. I think it's 11 or 12 or 13. One season, we set the home winning record at 23 consecutive wins at home. What does all that mean? It means at some point in time, you got to try to replenish. Like last year at the deadline, when we were competing for the President's Trophy, you know, there was a bunch of teams close. I thought that we had a chance to go on a playoff run, and that's why at the deadline last year I traded a second-round pick and a third-round pick and 2 prospects, Janmark and Backman, to acquire Eric Cole and to acquire Merritt Zidlicki. We thought we thought for sure we'd go into the playoffs with Cole and Abdelkader as big bodies, and we were crossing our fingers on Johan Franzen. By the time Game 1 showed up, Johan Franzen didn't get any better. Eric Cole, a doctor told him to end his career. And Abby broke his finger in Game 80 against Montreal and had a rod inserted in his finger, a pin inserted, and showed up in Game 3. Game 7, Zidlicki's concussed, and the suspension to Kroner. I don't know why all that happens, so what my message to you is, I thought last year we had a chance to win. This year at the trade deadline, as we got to the trade deadline, there was a couple of players that we had interest in. I knew the asking price for one of them was going to be a first-round draft pick. I wasn't prepared to trade a first-round draft pick because if we sit here today and we go to the draft in a month and the 16th pick, somebody else is going up there, it's not a good way to do business. Beyond that, we thought, you know what? We're going to give Mantha a chance. We're going to give Nosek a chance. We got some people here. So I got conservative at the deadline this year. I'm trying to compete, and we're trying to, is the word rebuild? I don't want to use the word reload because I know we're sitting here and you guys don't think that we're really all that good. So we're not reloading, and we're not rebuilding. We're trying to move young people onto our team. We're trying to be a playoff team, and we're trying to go on a playoff run. But to think that we're going to be 113 points a year for the next 5 years, Drew, no chance. And you know what? To tell you the honest truth, last year the Rangers won the President's Trophy. This year it's Washington. It's swinging. It's swinging. It's again, other than 2 or 3 teams in this league, there's different teams at different times.
People need to start accepting less.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But I think less can be more exciting. There was a time, Drew, when I used to come here and you guys used to tell me the regular season was boring. They were waiting for the playoffs, and even the first round was boring. They really only got excited in the second round, and you got excited for 6 weeks at the end of the season. Our playoffs start October the 8th or the 9th or the 10th, whenever it starts. But it starts for 20 teams, and it's a different league. It's a different world. You can't. Even teams that go bad for a decade, I don't know if you can dominate it because the salary cap hits and you get these players through entry level and all of a sudden they jump from $950 plus bonuses, and they want $5, $6, $7 million. It's hard to keep anything together. So you can go through this rebuild, and if everything hits the way you want, can you keep everybody? And there's teams out there that have been rebuilding for 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and I don't know. You don't know where it's going to go because the players come out of entry level and they want to get dramatic increases in their salaries. Stoney, got any questions for me?
Hey, Ken, right here.
Yeah.
Safe to assume that you've spoken to Pavel over the last few days? And if so,
Not about business. I've talked to him, but
So do you have a gut
I talked to his agent yesterday.
do you have a gut feeling on what's going to happen this offseason with him?
He's going to go to his agent told me he's going to go to the World Championships, and then he's going to give me his decision at that point in time. Given my past conversations with Pav and Dan Milstein over the last year, given the article that came out by Mitch Albom on the Sunday just before the playoffs started, given what's going on back there, with his teammates, taking pictures and doing things with them, I guess I would probably expect news that he's not coming back. Going to give him all the time that he needs. I plan to go to the World Championships. I'm hoping he's coming back, but I'd probably be a little bit naive to be sitting here and saying, "Oh, life's going to go on. Pav's going to be back." So certainly, I've got to, as we head into the summertime, I'm kind of formulating two plans: planned with Pav and planned without Pav. And obviously, another question is going to be: if you don't have Pav, what do you do about the cap space? That's certainly going to be a problem, a concern, or something to deal with. My take would be if he's not here, certainly you'd like to move the cap space, but if the price is going to be lots of futures, it doesn't make any sense. I'm going to get back to what Drew just asked. It doesn't make any sense. Pav's got 1 year to go on a contract to pay prime prospects or prime draft picks to free up 1 year of cap space. Given where this franchise is, because of the 25 years of being in the playoffs and not picking very high. So we'll see.
Kenny, with the exception of Larkin and probably Mrazek, when you look at the future of this team, you sit there and say, wow, we have a really bright future, and if so, where do you see it besides those two guys?
I've had the fortune, Stoney, I know what a championship team looks like. I've been here since 1985. I also know what an expansion team looks like. Jimmy D hired me as a scout in 1985, so I know what both look like. You need stars. So we've got to figure out a way to draft and develop. Nobody's giving you their stars. Or if you don't have stars, you need lots of good players. I think I can look at some teams and think that I don't know if but they've got lots of good players. We got to get lots of good players. You were here, Stoney. I remember there was a time I signed Pavel Datsyuk to a 7-year contract, and one of the questions in here, I think he hadn't scored a playoff goal in 22 straight games. You guys didn't believe. And Steve Yzerman had just moved into the front office, and Steve was in the locker room, and I leaned on Steve heavy. Steve believed. Steve believed that he was going to be a great player, and I believed he was going to be a great player, and it turned out pretty good. I don't know where some of these players are going to go. You know what I'm saying? I think we have lots of good players. I think we have lots of good prospects, lots of good players. But those players that can put a franchise on their back and carry them, they're hard to find. We've had lots of them through the years. I do think, first off, someone's going to do it, because I also think somebody's got to carry the mantle for all 30 teams. Even if you're not a very good team, someone's got to carry the mantle, right? So now, do they carry the mantle of not a very good team, or do they carry the torch or whatever, and you're a really good team? We need to draft. We need to develop. We've got to do a better job at free agency. We've got to do a better job at drafting. We've got to do a better job at developing. I'd like to think we've done a good job in those areas. We've got to do a better job. We're you know, been talking to our people over the last, since the January meetings. We've got to try to do a better job if we can. How do we? 2%. It's a 2% league. We've got to figure out how we can be 2% better at this, 2% better at that, 2% better at this, 2% better at that, because it's the only way you're gonna. That's the way you're gonna compete.
Roster like Tatar and Nyquist, do you see them getting better? They reach the ceiling, and defensively, it looks like De Keyser would be, the best all-around defenseman you have on the team, and is he even a 2 on most teams?
On Tatar and Nyquist, combined, they had 55 goals a year ago. One had 28, one had 27. And if I'm not mistaken, and I believe I'm right, I think 17 players in the league that year had 30 goals or more. They were just a couple of goals short of being in a real small group of players. Excuse me. Now, in the meantime, the other team's more aware of them. They're getting tougher matchups. And when Larkin shows up, when the manager signs Brad Richards, and there's more skill, there's only really, there's only so many. There's only 6 forwards can go on the power play, and then there's one's a net front presence, and there's a guy running the sideboards, and there's a guy at the point. Their opportunity, they didn't play as many minutes. They didn't play as many quality minutes. They didn't play, a year before Tats played part of the year with Pavel Datsyuk, so I think they went from 55 combined goals to maybe 35 combined goals. They were about 18 and 17, or maybe 37, 38, 39. But combined, they lost. Part of it was the power play. Our power play wasn't as good. Part of it was they didn't get as many quality minutes because there weren't as many offensive options a year earlier, and Mike Babcock played them more. So. I'm going to meet with those two guys. I'm going to meet with everybody here over the next 2 weeks. What's Gus? Gus is probably 26 years old. Tats is 25 years old. In the whole grand scheme of things, they're still pretty relatively young. They're good players. They're really good players. Dan De Keyser is, 26? He's a year away from unrestricted free agency. Legitimate top 4 defenseman. I'm a big Dan De Keyser fan. I think when we signed him out of college, we couldn't have hoped that he would develop any better than he has. He's 6'4". He's a great defender. He's mobile. He makes a good first pass. I think he's a top 4 defenseman on any team in the league, in my opinion. Because he's 6'4" and he's mobile, and he's a really good defender. So, those are 3 other players. Now, as we head into the summertime, one of the criticisms about our team is, and I think it's legitimate criticism, is the size. We're too small. We're too small. We're too small. And I would say to you, that's one of the things that we've talked about at the draft. Going back to when Jimmy Nill was here and Joe McDonnell was running it, you pick late, and first off, we had a lot of success for a long time with smallish skill players. There's some Stanley Cup pictures out here. And you're deep in the draft. When I say deep, you're picking 20, 22, 23, 24. Do you want to pick a 6-footer who's got a high ceiling of skill, or do you take a 6'3" guy that he's probably going to be a third line player, but he brings in he brings in dimension of size. Possibly we went too much one way. In the last 2 or 3 years, Svechnikov, our first pick, is 6'2", 215 pounds. You've seen Anthony Mantha, who's 6'5". Riley Sheehan, 6'2", 215 pounds. Abby's drafted in 2005, but certainly he's a big man. We're trying to get bigger. That's certainly one of the things, but I'm getting back to, again, maybe we can I'd like to make a move or two this summer to move a couple of bigger people onto the team, but we aren't going to go from being who we are to, these big bruisers over the course of a summertime. This has got to be, but at the same time, you need those small players. You need small guys that can dart around, and they bring creativity, and they bring skill to the team. So you need different dimensions. Last year, we took Billy Saryarvi in the 3rd round, who's 5'10" defenseman, but we think our scouts think that one day he can run a National Hockey League power play. So you're trying to draft different dimensions, but I'm not even sure what your question was, but I'm talking.
All right. You obviously, concern is so many big contracts on this team, and some of the players are aging, and many people think they are declining. And then you did say to Drew that fans should maybe expect less, and you also said that you're not going to rebuild because that takes too long. So what's your message, I guess, to fans that are disappointed over the last 5-6 years of the first-round knockouts?
There's nothing that we can do. Like there's 8 teams out in the first round. There's some good teams on the sidelines. So it doesn't matter what you do. We might make all the moves, and you might sign off them, and you might think they're all great moves. You might still be out. You might still miss the playoffs or be out. Like Boston missed the playoffs with us. We tied. We won an ROW with 93 points. If you're looking for guarantees, like guarantee win night, I see sometime in the American Hockey League or some of these junior leagues, they've got guaranteed win night, and if you don't get the win, you get another 2 tickets to a future game. I can't guarantee a win in the playoffs. I think as the manager, my message is we're trying to qualify for the playoffs. We're going to try to make some moves to be a little bit different. We're going to continue to try to move some young people onto our team, and some of the young people on our team, we're going to try to move them up in responsibility with getting more ice time. We're going to explore the trade route as we head into the draft. We're going to look at the players that might be or will be available on July the 1st. We're going to try to put the very best team that we can on the ice. We're in an 8-team division. 3 of those teams make the playoffs. Obviously, there's Florida, there's Tampa Bay, there's Montreal, there's Ottawa, there's Toronto, there's Buffalo, there's us. We're going to try to be a team competing for one of the 3 top spots in our division. And I see it differently than you see it. Certainly in Henrik Zetterberg's, he's 35. Kroner at 34 has got some. He had a tough year with his knee, and we scoped him at the All-Star break. But if you're 32 and 33, I don't know if you call that old. I mean, that used to be a youth movement around. The Utahs are talking about the glory days, like the glory days, they used to be, just so you know, they used to be 35 to 40 years old. It was Brett Hull and Luke Robitaille and Dominic Hasek and Chris Chelios and Nick Lidstrom and Steve Yzerman. They were Hall of Famers, but they were old. So, we're way younger today than we've ever been. As far as contracts go, if some of the contracts don't work out, I guess I would love the opportunity to sit out there and 2 years later judge the decisions that we're making. I don't get that opportunity. We're going to sit down this summer and whether it's a trade, whether it's to sign one of our own people, whether it's a free agent signing, we gather all the information that we can at the time, and we've got to make a decision. And I'm hoping that we're going to make way more good decisions than bad decisions. But we're dealing with people. This whole league is people. We're not perfect. And sometimes they fit here and they don't fit there. Sometimes that's why I've had the coach involved in these meetings, because I want to make sure that when we make these moves, the coach is on board, because if I'm on board and the coach doesn't like him, that doesn't work either. So I've always had Mike Babcock in the meetings, and Jeff Blashill going to be in the meetings. But when you get to training camp and all of a sudden some young player comes in and he sort of takes that veteran player's job, my message to the coach always has been, we're here to win. And if I've signed somebody and it hasn't worked out, don't worry about it, win. We're going to make some mistakes. Like, if you think we're going to be perfect, I don't know that anybody in the league can be perfect. We got to make way more good decisions than we make bad decisions, but we're going to make some decisions that don't turn out. Because we go into this summer and you look at you might look at some of the players on the team. Some of these guys were signed 2 and 3 years ago. How do I know what's going to happen on our team and in the league in 2019? It's great when you get to 2019 and you sit out there and you can say, "Oh, what are you doing with this and what are you doing with that?" Well, I don't get that luxury. I've got to make decisions this summer, and you guys want to know that the team is getting better. So I'm going to go out and try to make some moves. If the moves don't work, then you're going to be critical of making moves that don't work, right? Like, that's just the nature of the game, of the business. Like, not everything is going to work the way you want to work. Some is going to work. We talked about Dan DeKaiser. That move couldn't have worked any better, right? I signed Stephen Weiss, didn't work out. We made a decision to buy him out and move on. And he cost us about $1 million against the cap. And I think next year's 1.6 or 1.5. Didn't quite work out the way we want. So, this organization, I've been in it since 1983, when I was a minor league goaltender. The ownership, the fan base, they want to win. And that's why we make some of the moves that we make, is because the move didn't work. And we're going to try to mitigate the mistake or the maneuver and move on and try to do better. But there's nothing that I can do. I don't know anything anybody can do to guarantee that you're going to get into the playoffs and you're going to win playoff series. I think you're watching games out there. I mean, how do you know who's winning these games? They go to double overtime. We couldn't have played much better in Game 5. Their goalie was the story. Fabulous goaltending performance in Ben Bishop. It's 1-0. That's the league. All 4 of our games were decided in 3 minutes or 2 minutes to go in Game 5, with 3 minutes to go in Game 4. They're tied. The other 2 games that we lost are tied in the third period. They got the job done. We didn't. Are we this far apart, or are we this far apart? That's for you to. I think we're this far apart. You might think we're that far apart. I also think that some of these other teams that maybe look like they're better today, there's a cap out there. This cap is designed for parity. You can't get away from the cap. So even if we're not quite as good as you think, I think we're better than you think in relation to our competitors, because the cap is coming. The cap is coming. This summer, the cap is coming to all of us. I mean, we made a decision to sign Justin Abdelkader. And we took Abby from a 1.8 cap number to a 4.25 cap number. And if he was on the market today, July the 1st, I think he'd get more. Obviously, there's some other people in there, and whether they're restricteds or whether they're unrestricteds, we make decisions to spend money and to keep some people, and you let other people go and you move some young people. Those decisions don't just happen in Detroit. They happen in 29 other teams in the league. So the cap is designed for parity. So we sit in there every day. Ryan Martin's at the back. We sit in there every day, and we look at all the teams, and we talk, and how can we do this, and how can we do that? I think, my message is, I got to stay the course. We're going to try to qualify for the playoffs. We're going to try to draft. We're going to try to develop. We're going to move some younger people onto our team, and we got to hope that some of these young people, as they get, Zetterberg and Datsuk really became Zetterberg and Datsuk when Steve Yzerman retired and Robert Lang left. And the power play came, and the year earlier, Robert Lang was on the power play. The next year after the work stoppage, they were on the power play, and their confidence grew. So, some of these people are young people are waiting their turn. When if Pav is gone, somebody else got to go on the power play. Can they do the job? I don't know until you give some of those young people the opportunity. Can they do the job?
Ken, two goalies, Peter's an RFA.
Yeah.
I assume he's due a little bit more money. What are you going to do here? I mean, can you carry $10 million a goalie? Are you planning on doing that? How's that going to shake out? Will you have both goalies next year?
Well, obviously, I got to meet with Peter and his representatives here and get them signed. I'm not sure what we got to figure. We got to go through. I've got my ideas and what the next deal should be, and they've got their ideas, and you got to find a solution in the middle. We'll see. We'll see. I think that I can see on one hand having two goaltenders it's a nice luxury. Certainly, Jimmy Howard played an important role down the stretch in us qualifying for the playoffs when Peter hit the wall a little bit. But certainly, I also could see if things could work out better via trade. Might be good for the organization, good for some careers, but I haven't really thought about it. I got to talk. I've thought about it lots. That's what I'm paid to do. I've thought about it lots. I'm going to get to the draft, and I'm going to talk to a lot of people and see what's out there. Bob.
You mentioned Hasek earlier. He was another guy who went home and then decided he wanted to come back. Is there any concern that if Pavel goes home and you did move his contract, and then maybe you get a call in August and he's changed his mind and wants to play?
Well, Bob, I would say to you that I don't know. Like, when I signed Pav to this contract, I believe he thought, and I thought he was going to play 3 years. Now with a year to go in the contract, and he's against the cap, he has desires to go home. I don't know how I could know that. I don't even know if he knew it. I don't even think Pav would have known the rules. That's not his job to know the rules. He's got agents that represent him. So if you think I can't manage with a crystal ball. I can only make decisions today based upon the information that I've got. If I wake up 3 months from now and the information's totally different, I don't know how. I can't operate like that. Certainly those are questions that I'm going to ask Pav. But if all of a sudden he has an about face in September and says, "Boy, I don't like it over here. I'm going to go to the National Hockey League," and we've traded his rights, I'll have to deal with it. I'll live with it. I can't have it both ways. I can't be one in. That's where you guys come in, right? That's where you guys have that's where I'm coming back. You get the luxury to kind of, after things play itself out, then judge the way it worked or didn't work. I don't have that luxury. We got to make decisions based upon the information that we've got at the time.
Yeah, Ken, I know you've got several unrestricted guys, some or all of them who might not be back. Can you just speak specifically about Darren Helm, and what are your thoughts on him, and just the qualities that you like about him that might persuade you to try to re-sign him?
Well, I like Helmer. I've had two coaches that they both like Helmer. They play him lots of minutes. He can kill penalties. He can skate in a league where speed is important. He's got speed. He plays hard. He seems to be able to play up and down the roster. He's versatile. Mike Babcock and I thought at the time that he was as good a third-line center as there was in the National Hockey League. And then Mike, we had lots of center icemen. Mike converted him to a winger, and he's done a good job on the wing. I think he could move back to the middle if he had to. He had a time there a couple of years ago when he had 2 seasons of a lot of injuries. He appears to have kind of conquered some of those ailments. They had some back issues, I think, at the time. The last 2 years. Last year he had a really good year. I went to his agent and Helmer in training camp and talked that maybe we should engage in a conversation about an extension, and then he got hurt, and obviously he was out for about 10, 15 games to start the season, and we just decided that we would kind of wait till the end of the season. I like Helmer. I think we've just talked here. Obviously, in a cap world for the player and for the club, cap numbers are important. I know, I'm a Medicine Hat alumni. Helmer's a Medicine Hat alumni. So I know, I followed Helmer extra close after we drafted him, because he came from the same junior team that I did. His fiance used to be in our backyard playing with my kids. We were neighbors with Devin. So I've known Devin, his fiance, since she was been 2-3 years old. So, I know Helmer and Devin really, really good. I think he wants to come back. We've talked a little bit, but certainly I also understand this is an important contract for him. So I'm going to sit down. I've got interest in Helmer coming back, but obviously it takes two to tango. So Helmer has to, and his agent have to decide what their priorities are. ... Now we watch or wait. Bob.
Ken, if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like you feel like you need to be more aggressive this offseason. You talked about going to the draft and looking for trades, free agency and whatnot. Is that, would it be a stark departure from previous off seasons because it's been 4 exits in 5 years?
You look at it differently than I do, okay? Let me tell you how I look at it. I'm going to go over the last 4 years. In 13, we scraped our way in the playoffs in the 48-game season. Thought we had a great series with Anaheim, won in Game 7, didn't get the job done with Chicago. Anaheim and Chicago were, in my opinion, 2 of the best teams in the league. We went into that off season. There was a parting of the ways, between the Red Wings and Val Filppula. We wanted to get another center iceman. We needed to get if we didn't have Phil, we needed to get another center iceman. So we had a good playoff. I thought we had a good, but we'd like to have won one more game, and Chicago went on and won the Stanley Cup, and we were up 3-1 on them. So you feel you're relatively close. We added Daniel Alfredsson, we added Stephen Weiss. We went into the next season, and if you remember, that was the Olympic year. Zetterberg has back surgery coming out of the Olympics. As you come out of the Olympics, Pavel Datsyuk, I think, played 4 of the last 22 games. He had knee issues. Somewhere in there, I think we had other injuries. Jonathan Ericsson had broke his finger. He was down, and now you played Boston. We lose to Boston in 5 games. We've got a shell of our team. That's not our. Zetterberg and Datsyuk are supposed to be a big part of our team. Zetterberg comes back in game 4 off of 12 weeks of back surgery. So as you head into that off season, you don't really have a real read on your team. I'm not even really sure what we did that off season. that leads into last year. I thought we had 100 points. We were in the mix up until the last 10, 15 games with Montreal and Tampa Bay for the division. They ran away with it a little bit, and I think they had 108 and 109 points. We had 100. We went into the season again and I'm coming back to Bob. I thought that there was real improvement in Glendenning, in Mrazek, in Sheehan, in Tatar. Tatar went from 19 goals to 27. Nyquist had backed up a 28-goal season with another 28-goal season. We felt that we just needed to get a little deeper. Ever since Mike Babcock had said at one of these press conferences 3 years ago, we needed a right-shot defenseman. There's been this right-shot defenseman watch that's gone on in Detroit. Can Ken Holland deliver that right-shot defenseman that Mike Babcock talked about at the year-end meeting? We obviously acquired Meredith Zidlicki at the deadline. And then this offseason we acquired, Mike Green and Ritchie. So, you look at it and say, well, you've won one playoff series in 6 years, is it, or 5 years? I'm not even. That's a fact. That's a fact. And I would say, in my opinion, this is the first summer. Guess what I'm trying to say? This is the first summer. Last year, I thought we had a good year, and we were within a whisker away. And we made a couple. The year before, I couldn't evaluate our team because we didn't have our team. They were hurt. The summer before that, we beat Anaheim in a 7-game series. We lost Game 7 against Chicago. They won the Stanley Cup. We felt we were close. We added Weiss. We added Daniel Alfredson. This is probably the first off season and maybe the first off season, since Nick Lidstrom retired. Now with obviously Pav, that I've got to look at trying to do more than adding to what we've got. Maybe we've got to shake up the pot a little bit. Now, Bob, if I go and I make calls and we start talking about some of the players in our team, we can't be in the giving players away mode. There's got to be deals out there that make good business sense. Or we got to keep what we've got, and we've got to try to support it better, differently, bigger, heavier, and get some secondary players in here that bring some dimensions that we lack. I don't know, does that answer your question? For me, this is the first. You might sit and say, oh, last year we lost to Tampa Bay. Well, I don't know. Like, we're in a sport where where teams win and teams lose. Like, now we've lost too much in the playoffs. We've won enough in the regular season to be on the top half of the league. We've lost too much in the playoffs to be a factor come playoff time. This is the first off season, in my opinion, where what we did over the last 8 months wasn't good enough. I thought it was good enough last year. I thought we had 100 points. I thought we made progress. We had young people taking a step forward. I don't know why you can't. Why we didn't win the series against Tampa Bay. They're a good team too. Certainly this year, we never got any over 82 games. We never got any traction to really put any good run together, and we finished it off by losing in 5 games to Tampa Bay. It was a very disappointing season, where I don't think last year it was very disappointing to lose the Tampa Bay series, but I thought there was lots of positives to build on. This year, lots of our players that we thought were going to take a step forward, they didn't take a step forward. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know why. I can obviously talk to a lot of people. We're going to think about it. But, it's a different disappointment. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Okay, just, what did you think of Blashill's, Jeff's rookie season here as a head coach? How would you assess it?
I think Blash did a good job. Mike Babcock was here for 10 years, and we had I think we had a lot of success. I'm not sure what anybody else thinks, but I thought we had a lot of success. And the last couple of years under Mike Babcock, I thought we put some groundwork, some pieces in place. He worked some younger people in. And then obviously Babs chose to leave. But Babs is such a big personality. I'm not sure if that's the word, but he had such a presence. I think that's a better word. That whoever was coming behind Mike Babcock was going to have, you know, it's like school. You know, when the teacher's there, and then not that Jeff Blashill was a substitute teacher, but certainly Mike Babcock had a presence there for 10 years, and Blash came in. So I think that Jeff had to deal with kind of a, you know, different relationship with the players than they were accustomed to under Mike Babcock. You know, Blash, I think, is the second youngest coach in the National Hockey League. He's had success, lots of success in the American Hockey League. 1 year, Western Michigan did a great job in taking that program to another level. I think he won a championship in Indianapolis. He's going to be a better coach for what he went through this year. I always talk to you guys about, you know, we have these players in the minors and experience, and they need to put miles under their tires. And I think that Blash did a great job. I think he's a really good young coach. I think that he had to deal with some you know, just coming behind Mike Babcock was a challenge. And I think that he found a way to guide our team into the playoffs. You know, we played 7-5, I think, our last 12 games to kind of play our way in, you know, a little bit above 500. Nothing spectacular, I think, from a record standpoint. But I thought that we, you know, when the season was on the line, he got our team to play really good. Much, you know, we started to evolve as a team, and I think that he's going to be a better coach for what he went through this year. I think he's going to be a tremendous coach in the National Hockey League. And as you guys are all sitting here, you know, some of our key players they're a little older. They're not quite the players that they were 4 and 5 years ago. They're still really good players. We need to support them better. And if we can support them better, they still got lots to give. But if we don't support them better, and we're expecting the older guys to carry the franchise around, they ain't gonna do that. So that's on me, and that's on you know, Jeff and I to work together to try to support, you know, and the organization, the pro scouts. We got to figure out a way to support some of our older players better, because they might not be able to play 20 minutes or 24 minutes, but they can still play a few less minutes, and maybe a little down the line we can still be real good players. That's what they did. That's what they did for Lidstrom and Yzerman and Lang and Shanahan was here in 06. As their careers were starting to wind near the end, Zetterberg and Datsuk and Cronwell and those players, they pitched in big time. Those players, those stars were able to still have an impact on our team. In 2006 in Edmonton, when we lost out, I thought our best forward was Steve Yzerman. He couldn't do that every night for 82 games, but he could still do it when our season was on the line. I still think that because these older players have a lot of will, they have a lot of determination, we need some of our younger people to take a step up. Now, if you know, to the question, if Pav leaves, there's going to be an opportunity for someone to be playing more minutes and more offensive minutes and playing with better players and playing on the power play. It's up to them to take advantage of that opportunity. And if that player doesn't take advantage of the opportunity, then we got to find another young player, or find somebody on the free agent market, or find a trade to make a deal that's going to make us a little bit different, a little bit better. That's it. Thank you.